Hi, I'm Mac McCarthy, and I help people with their breakups. And today we're going to react to Coach Lee's psychology of reattraction. And reattraction is different than an initial attraction, a first-time attraction. He gets into this a little deeper, gives a really good take. I'm going to give you my take on his take, and we'll see what happens. And if you have a video that you want me to react to, throw it in the comments below. Let's get into it.
Talk to you about the psychology of reattraction. So it's important to understand that the principles of reattraction are different from the principles of attraction, though all of the principles of attraction still apply. When you're reattracting someone, it can be quite a bit different simply because it has already happened before. And when you have already attracted someone, we have to look at what changed. And what's interesting is that the original factors of attraction could still be there. And what I often see is that it's the time and the intimacy that, while a good thing, can be what causes attraction to fall when certain circumstances are allowed to happen. And I'm going to explain. There's a famous quote by Geoffrey Chaucer, and he says, "Familiarity breeds contempt." And what that means is that the more that you're around someone, the more that you experience what it's really like to be with someone, and it happens a lot. It's a daily thing. It happens for years. It happens for months. That idealized image that you had of them originally tends to be shattered, or at least fade significantly. Those little things that they did in the beginning that seemed so cute are now kind of annoying. That's a very common thing that I hear from people, and it's backed up by psychological principles where I've been able to look at some of these studies and PhD research on intimacy and attraction. And so, though this is a matter for another video, one of the keys to maintaining a relationship that can stand the test of time is that the two of you experience new things together and you grow together, and things don't just simply become stale. Now, there's a difference in someone who just gets bored and wants to go off and be with other people or just break up and go see what's out there. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about walking on eggshells and trying to constantly come up with things to do so that this other person doesn't get bored. And great relationships are often between people who can just be, who can just exist. Maybe you're just laying in bed watching a movie, and that's the highlight of the day. And that's fine because you're together. It doesn't have to be some amazing party or some tropical vacation and always having to do things to keep this other person interested. That sounds like a nightmare in a lot of.
So really quick, familiarity breeds contempt. I don't know if that's always the case. I would absolutely say in certain situations, I'd say familiarity a lot of times breeds safety and predictability. So sometimes people like predictability. There's people that like to feel safe. These are people that like to be in a marriage. They like to be in a monogamous relationship. Like he just mentioned, being bored might be a different thing altogether. And a lot of times what I find in breakups, individuals in their early 20s, especially 21, 22, 23, and they're like, what happened? What went wrong? An individual gets bored, or they just want to see what it's like to be single. And a lot of times they're thinking, what did I do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. It's just timing and circumstances. And so what happens in a long-term relationship, like he's mentioning here, is you get bored or annoyed with some things that used to be cute because you don't really have outlets outside of that person. But also those things could have bothered you in the beginning and you let them go, and now they've just elevated. The other part of that I think is interesting is that you will, when you're in a relationship, a lot of times you'll overlook some things that you kind of don't like, but then they become more amplified as the relationship gets deeper and you're together longer. And you look back and you're like, they were like that in the beginning, right? So there's a lot of twists and turns to that element. But I would say overall that familiarity breeds contempt. I don't think that's always true. I think that there's some people that love the fact that they know what their partner's going to do and say. So I don't think that's the case when you first are with someone. There's an element of surprise that's attractive, mystery. But when you're together with someone over time and you're in an official relationship, familiarity is not the enemy. Okay, let's get back into it.
Ways. And so that's not what I'm suggesting. What needs to happen so that a relationship can be its best and has the best chance of being long-term is that the people in the relationship, the two people, understand that the circumstances of life, the details, the situations, that those things are not the relationship, that this is about the other person, and that they both will become devoted to the relationship and to each other and to nourishing what they have. And when it hasn't been nourished, that doesn't mean that you throw the baby out with the bathwater. That doesn't mean that you leave the relationship. That means that you turn back toward nourishing it with things that I've already mentioned and that I mentioned in other videos. But let's talk for a moment about reattraction. And so that's where this person has decided they do not want to walk this path with you anymore. And it's where they have not seen things as I mentioned they should. They have not seen things as these circumstances of life are separate, and no matter what happens, we are together and we are going to work through this. When they stop seeing it that way, you can either decide that this is not worth it and that you are going to move on yourself, or you can decide you're going to try to reattract them and then work this out together. And that takes grace and forgiveness toward the other person. But if you decide to do that, that's your choice. And don't let people tell you you're making the wrong choice or that you should just ignore this person and walk your own way. If you feel that it's worth giving it another shot, then that's your business. So here are my 5 steps in the psychology of reattraction. Number 1, exploit being taken for granted. And that's what's happened here. Any breakup, any separation or divorce is where the other person has been taken for granted. The one who leaves is taking the person that they have left for granted. And that means that they're saying, you being in my life is already granted, no matter what situation I'm in. It means you'll be there. You are a given. And so I can do whatever I want. And if I ever change my mind, I can get you back. But they don't think they're going to change their mind. And so even that is not concerning for them at all, that they could be wrong about that. It's an assumption that they just walk with when they leave you. But
I'm not sure this is always the case, that they know that then when they walk away, they're going to have the option again, because there's plenty of cases where someone's moving away. There's other circumstances to breakups where someone knows they don't have the option to get you back. But he is absolutely correct in the sense that when someone does break up with you, especially with his example of over contempt, of familiarity, or they're sick of you, if you beg, plead, or you want to stay with them, just simply put, you don't want to break up, then yeah, initially they do feel like, yeah, I could have this person back, right? Especially if you've broken up before and got back together. And this is a whole nother video to be made, but the idea that the history of your relationships had a breakup or two or problem, and that person is the one that can get you back when they want to, well then, yeah, that's true. I don't really like the word exploit for anything, but I understand what he means by the idea that you're exploiting them, taking you for granted. So the way to do that is to not make yourself available again, which is what no contact does, right? So let's get back into it.
It extended all the way back into the relationship, at least in the final stages before the breakup. This person took you for granted, and breaking up with you is the ultimate in taking you for granted. And how you exploit that is you show them that your presence is not granted in their life. It's not some wish that's been granted permanently, but it's actually something that is at great risk.
Okay, so I want to talk about this real quick, because some people are like, yeah, they took me for granted. Yeah, they didn't appreciate me. Be honest with yourself, okay? If it's a situation, this is the thing. You see a video like this, and this is good information, but this information is applying to certain breakups, not all breakups, certain situations, certain relationships, okay? And so someone will say, oh yeah, they took me for granted. They took me for granted. The reality is sometimes you got to look in the mirror and go, wait a minute, what was the problem? Okay, so let me give you an example right now. If the problem was money, right, and you haven't had a job in a year, and you smoke weed every day, and you look in the mirror post-breakup and you're like, yeah, I've been a bit of a deadbeat, right? This kind of information where you're like, I'm going to take for granted the fact that they're not appreciating me. You gotta look in the mirror and go, wait a minute, did this person have a point in why they broke up with me? Now, don't beat yourself up. This is an opportunity for you to go, all right, I need to get a job. This has become a problem. I need to quit smoking weed every day, right? I need to get off my ass. Because if you think to yourself, yeah, they just took me for granted. And a lot of people will take information like this post-breakup and not fit it to their situation. And that's why I always tell people, send me your story, because that's going to be tailored advice. Now, if you watch a video like this information applies to a lot of people. But there are some people that would go, yeah, they took me for granted. When reality is there was some really good reasons that person broke up with you. You know what they are. And if you take this into the breakup and you go, well, they just took me for granted. I was really good. I was there for them. I never cheated. You start building this case in your head. But then you don't really look in the mirror and go, a lot of people wouldn't put up with the way I've been this last year. So just make sure when you get advice like this, it applies to your situation and you're taking some accountability and responsibility. All right, let's get back into it.
Based on their actions. And how you do that simply is you don't chase them. You don't try to talk them back into your life. You don't constantly check on them, and you don't pursue them. For one thing, this has already been done most likely. Usually when the other person breaks up with someone, that person who's being broken up with will say, I don't want this. I love you. What can I do? We can fix this. And the other person says, no, I don't want that. And so that statement that you will change, that you want this relationship, has already been said, and it's already known. So it doesn't have to be repeated. And at this point, basically, you have to, as I say a lot, give them the breakup. And that's how you exploit that they are taking you for granted. You remove yourself from the situation because.
All right, really quick. I prefer, instead of saying, I'm going to give you the breakup, which is an option, and words count on how you believe in something and how you follow through with something. So if that doesn't vibe with you, or I'm going to give them the breakup, I'd prefer to say, I accept the breakup. I accept how they feel. And then what you want to do is get their perspective. Really, this is one of the things I do when I talk to people and we break down their story in a coaching session, is we get into perspective, not your perception, which is biased. So where are they coming from, right? And when you see, like the example I just gave earlier, you haven't made money in a year, you're on the couch all the time, you're lazy, you can see where they're coming from. This isn't to put you down. This is to get real. Instead of creating a case where you're like, oh, they're just taking me for granted because I never cheated. I've always been there for them, right? All right, let's get back into it.
Their assumption is something that they're usually not even aware of. They have to be asked. And then when they start thinking about it and talking about it, they will actually say, I kind of think I could just get them back if I wanted them. That's a very common response from someone in that situation when they have to think about it. But it's inside. It's more of a gut level emotion rather than a thought, where they just feel like that because your value's lower and they therefore assume theirs is higher, that just simply because of the math of the situation, that they could get you back anytime and you would gladly take them back. You would be thrilled. So that's what you have to push against for starters. The next thing you have to do, step number 2 of how to reattract someone, is that you demonstrate independence. And so what that means is you do things without informing them, without them knowing, and without their help or their company. You go do your own thing. And you see, a lot of the times that will get back to them, because nowadays, especially with social media, we are able to follow people. We're able to figure things out, especially if there's mutual friends. Your ex or the person who is wanting to leave you will usually ask people about you, even if they're not interested.
Really like this point. Demonstrate independence. Well put, Mr. Coach Lee. I'd add to that doing things that you want to do, doing things that you actually feel good about, right? Not staging events. And he doesn't mention this, right? He's saying that it'll get back to them. I love that. Instead of, hey, post this on social media making you look a certain way. What happens with that is people do it all the time, is someone goes, all right, I'm gonna post a picture, I'm gonna stage an event, and that can work sometimes, but the problem with that is it's not authentic, number one. If you got found out that it's bogus, then it's curtains, right? You just lost a lot of respect. You also lose respect for yourself. So what he's saying here is demonstrate independence and let it get back to them organically rather than you trying to stage something or plant a seed on purpose. And he's right. There's so much social media out there. There's mutual friends. It will get back to them like, hey, you know what? Lee's doing pretty well right now. Have you seen Lee? Like, because your ex will ask about you if you had somewhat of a good relationship. And if they hear you're doing your thing, and it doesn't need to be over the top. And also, like, I've had a client in the past that was staging events where and or planting seeds that were lies, like, oh, I was with 2 girls last night. Oh, I took a picture with a girl that I gave a ride on my motorcycle with. Literally, this is true. And I was like, are you lying though? Yeah. But I've seen it in a video that this is how you get the reaction. I don't recommend that, right? I don't recommend that. You should be demonstrating independence for you. Don't be doing it as a staged act, okay? Does it make you feel better about yourself? When it doesn't work, it makes you feel worse. And really, it's inauthentic. And that's, if you're going to get someone back as your long-term partner, right, you want to do it with honesty.
Interested yet in getting back together with you, they will ask someone what's going on with you, and they find things out. And if they see independent actions where you are living your life and you're doing your own thing, it's pushing against some of that taking for granted that they did. But it's also something that is going to give them the biggest reality check on the breakup. Because before, the two of you were intimate. Hopefully you weren't codependent, but you were choosing to depend on each other, which is called interdependence. When I expect and need something from you and I choose for that to be the case, I am interdependent with you, and it doesn't mean that I'm codependent. So I'm not obsessed, and I'm not unable to function if you were to cease to exist. And so when you demonstrate independence, it is a big reality check for them, because it shows that you are no longer in that intimate state with them. And you may think, well, how do they not know that if they broke up with me? They haven't thought that far ahead usually. They haven't experienced the reality of it. It's just a concept. And so when they actually have to see it, that's when they can actually feel a negative from it and experience negative consequences, instead of just sort of this mirage that they think that they're going to run into. And so,
okay, so in certain cases, yes. Okay, this is again why your individual breakup, and when you're watching these videos, right? And tell me in the comments below if you got to this point in the 16-minute mark of this video, this information, a video like this, doesn't apply to every relationship. And a lot of times people will be like, for example, no contact videos, right? It's like, oh, no contact's this, no contact's that. You do it for this reason. You be on your purpose. You're da-da-da-da-da-da. But someone goes, my breakup's a little bit different. It's like right here, he's saying that by demonstrating your independence, it's going to automatically make them rethink the breakup in the relationship. There's some people out there post-breakup that if you're demonstrating independence and they're checked out on the relationship or they're seeing someone else, they could be genuinely just happy for you, and it could work as something that they're not going to just come back to you. So don't think this is a given. What I would say, demonstrating independence is a bonus in the sense that this is what you should be doing post-breakup for you to get through it and get out the other side of the tunnel and see the light that you're okay being single. It's actually a step, even if they don't come back, and they won't come back. This is actually a step to it. All right, let's get back into it.
So independent acts can be as simple as just going out and having a good time with your friends. It can be doing something new, like maybe buying a new car or another car, developing a new hobby, or finishing a project that you've been working on a long time and you just maybe have been putting it off. But it's something that's new, and it can give you basically this different appearance. And I'm not just speaking physically, I'm talking emotionally. You all of a sudden seem different than the person that they took for granted, the person who they were around so much that the familiar part of that bred contempt to where they didn't see you the same way they used to, and that newness had worn off. And
okay, don't go out and buy a car to demonstrate independence. That was not a great example. I'm not sure that that's that impressive unless you have an extremely materialistic individual and you're going to buy an extremely expensive and pricey car. Okay, so like if someone's into cars, maybe that's it. I think what he's getting at here, I've made videos about this before, you're almost typecasted, right? If you saw Robert De Niro in a movie where he's playing croquet and a really soft character guy, you'd be like, this isn't Robert De Niro, right? And so what he's saying is post-breakup, you demonstrating your independence, it'll be a little bit out of character and they might rethink things. They might question things. I would say if you're going to demonstrate your independence, stay within your parameters of your character. Don't do a knee-jerk reaction like buy a car that's completely out of your character just to impress or overcompensate for your sadness. I mean, do something that you actually want to do. And it's in every video. Start with exercise, the gym, running, whatever, because that helps your body look better. It helps you feel better. So that would be the number one thing to do, some kind of exercise routine where you're feeling and looking better. All right, let's get into it.
Now they're seeing something different about you. And see, all these things, this is not what's going to win them back. This is just getting them to reconsider the details, the facts, and the feelings of this situation. It's getting them to take a look at this again, because you don't want to win somebody back just because you're doing something different or you're demonstrating independence. Those are not good reasons to have someone come back to you, because then it's all about performance. And you don't want that in a relationship.
I think that you don't want the theme, I'm going to win them back. Personally, as a man, someone with some dignity, if someone broke up with me, if a girlfriend broke up with me, we've been for years and she has her reasons, I'm not in the mindset I'm going to win you back, right? If I did something wrong, directly wrong, right, such as cheating, you need to apologize for that. You don't need to over-explain it. You don't need to apologize 100 times. You need to be accountable for what you did, right? If someone's lost interest or love for you and you're trying to win them back, for some relationships, and this is my point about a lot of these different videos, they don't apply to everyone. And this is a good video by Coach Lee. This is good information. But in some cases, you attempting to just have the mindset, I'm going to win them back, you're already unattractive in that way, right? Because you're overcompensating and trying to be someone you're not. And you're not, and by the way, no action post-breakup is going to make up for 6 months or 3 months of someone losing attraction for you. So when he mentions these items about demonstrating independence, don't think you can do one of these things or you can do it for a week and it's going to get back to them and it's just going to cure things. Be real. Like if you're, for example, if you said, I'm out of shape, I'm going to go back to the gym. I know one of the things is I got fat, right? Some people don't even like to use that word. They're sensitive to that. I got fat. I know that's a big reason why she lost attraction for it. Get your ass back into the gym, running, exercising, getting on a better diet. That's not going to happen in a day or a week. So just keep in mind, sometimes you watch this stuff and you're like, oh, well, if I bought a car and then they saw me in this new car, this is going to demonstrate that things have changed for me and I'm making a lot of money. No, I don't think so. They might even think like, wow, that's really out of character. How much did that car cost him? I know what he makes a month. That's going to be a lot, right? This is totally out of character. So it doesn't apply to everyone. The number one thing to do probably is get into an exercise routine. Lead with that one. Because like I said, if they hear you're looking good, feeling good, rather than having material items, which would be a small segment, and I'm just being completely biased on my own here. If you're with someone that's highly materialistic like that, I mean, where does it end, right? That you have to impress them with items. So let's get back to it real quick.
Number 3 is that when they start to move towards you a little bit, which is very common, they'll reach out. They'll want to know how you're doing. When they do that, you absorb their momentum. You don't reflect it. And what I mean by that is that when they reach out to you, that you don't say how wonderful it is to hear from them, how much you've missed them, asking if they're feeling differently, things like that. You absorb what they say by casually responding in a similar way to them. If they do say something that's fairly extreme, like that they miss you, that's a good sign. That's good news. But you need to be careful, because if you give it back to them completely, you can actually start sending them back in the stages that I talk about in my video, stages your ex goes through during no contact. You can send them back into some of those earlier stages where they're still relieved and enjoying being away from you because they start taking you for granted again. And so if you show them, hey, nothing's changed, everything is just as it was, and you can get me back if you want me, then you're actually not doing yourself any favors. And so a great thing to do is to simply respond in a similar way to them and then try to pull it back just a small amount. So for example, if they say they miss you, you can say, I miss you too, but I hope you're doing well otherwise. Just basically to where you've made it casual, where you're not saying, I miss you too, let's get together, but you're actually pulling it back.
Really good stuff here. This is absolutely true. I think this is a great approach. You don't want to overdo and just try to get back together in a day. They say they miss you. I miss you too. I hope things are going well. What he's saying here is don't overcompensate. Don't go for the gold right away, because the minute you show neediness, clinginess, desperation, they just go, yep, that's the person I broke up with, right? And what he's saying is accept the compliment, accept the positive feedback, but respond neutral, slightly positive, and don't overdo it. Great advice here.
Slightly. And you're not trying to play head games with them. You are demonstrating maturity because you should be cautious of this person. They left you. They walked away from you. They tossed the relationship aside. You shouldn't be quick to just take them back. You should be open to it. And you can even say something like that. If they say they want to get back together, you can say, I'm open to that, but I want to take it one day at a time. Because they need to know that you're not just easily gotten back. They might be able to get you back, but they need to earn you back. That's important. And so when they reach out to you, you need to be patient as far as getting this all back. You don't want to get it all back with one conversation. You may admit that you're willing to move forward or that you're willing to consider moving forward. That's the extent that you need to do in the situation. Before I go to step 4, take a quick second and subscribe to this channel so you can be notified when I have more videos like this one. Step number 4 in the psychology of re-attraction is that you go back to the beginning. And what I mean by this, it's a little more complicated than it sounds, but basically you don't pick up where you left off with this person. You take a step all the way back to the beginning. And it won't be perfect because you do know this person. You do have experiences. But do your best to think about it as you are going back to date number 1, or let's say number 2, since you already know them. And so that means they don't have all the privileged rights they had with you before. Now, those things are going to come along fairly quickly. Physical intimacy, those kind of things do develop fairly quickly when you're dating someone. And it should take that path again, but it shouldn't all just be back at one time. But if you can look at it as that you are starting over with them and you're trying to build new experiences with them and you're trying to build a new relationship with them because the old one didn't work. And so you want to look into what caused the issues. I also have available on my website.
Absolutely true. You're starting a new relationship, new times. And I don't want to say a new you, but a new relationship. Yeah. And you're keeping in mind what he just said, what he kind of glossed over. What were the problems? So I mean, this is one of the main things post breakup that you need. Are the problems fixable? Do you want to fix them? Are they willing to work through the problems? And so post breakup, when you start to date again or you see each other again, like if problem was you drinking too much, has that stopped? A problem of you gaining too much weight, are you on the right track? And you don't. It's similar in the sense someone's an alcoholic. They go, oh yeah, I quit, and you go, yeah, it's only been a week, right? So when you get back to dating with someone, and they built a case why they broke up with you, it's not going to be so simple that you just say, oh yeah, no, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm much better now. You have to demonstrate that behavior and not be trying to sell them on it. Does that make sense? And so what a lot of people do is like, I just want to get back together, or let's get back together, especially guys. They don't want to get back into dating again for a long period of time because they're like, you're my girlfriend. We've been together a long time. I don't want to play this game. But it's not really a game. It's the fact that it's kind of like this. It's like living in a house where the pipes are broken, the roof's leaking, everything's wrong with it, right? And you were constantly repairing the house just a little bit, but the house was just needed to be demolished, and you needed to build a new house because there was mold in the walls, there's water leaking, everything. It wasn't even worth it to reconstruct the house as it is. You drop it to the studs and you build a new house. And that's the same thing you do when you get into reattraction and getting back together.
What's called a temperament assessment. And that's basically where you learn how you interact with people and how other people interact with you based on your temperament. And you can take a look at that at myexpatcoach.com along with my emergency breakup kit. And you can learn how to prevent some of these bad things from bringing a relationship down like it did before. And the emergency breakup kit is also a guide to get your ex back after a breakup. And you can get all that information at myexpatcoach.com. Step number 5 is that you go back to the original attraction factors, because at this point, you've done what you need to do to reattract this person. They have now taken a seat at the table in front of you, and you can do what you did in the beginning. You can be who you are because it worked before. But along the way, a lot of times we will begin to stop doing those things that we did in the beginning. And it's important to try to keep those in the mix to try to keep them in the relationship, because that's what attracted this person. And so you want to attract them ongoing as you journey with this person.
Great closing point. Go back to the basics of what was attractive to them in the beginning and some new things about you, and getting to the point where you don't overcompensate. This is huge, where you're doing something like going to the gym and you mention it to them 3 times, and you maybe wear a no shirt or something like that, and you're like, look at me, right? This is just total overcompensation. Like I said, the car example, I think that's just an overcompensation. Doing things out of character would be the opposite things of what to do, where when you look back and you're like, one of the things we really enjoyed was going to the beach, right? Or doing something that you lost track of that actually increased intimacy, attraction for both of you. So this is a great video. Let me know in the comments what you thought. Let me know what you think about the psychology of reattraction. Stay tuned. I will be doing some more reaction videos. And if you like breakup stories, real breakup stories, those are on the channel too. Thank you.